The companion imparted to Spock a rather quaint old-fashioned electric shock of respectable voltage. Bones prefers carrots to sticks, and Zefram Cochrane might try to plant a fig tree. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton and Walter Koenig.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek, the original series, Season 2, Episode 9, Metamorphosis, written by somebody you may know, Gene L. Kuhn, directed by Ralph Sinensky. This was November 10th, 1967. Where were all of you? How you guys doing today?
I'm doing great. I am excellent. 1967. I wasn't here yet.
Watching this was a whole new experience for me because I'd never seen it before. So it was quite interesting.
Well, here's something fun for everybody at home. None of us have seen this episode before. This is a first time for all three of us. Who knows if we'll have similar reactions? Everybody at home, please make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for notifications. If you're listening in, give us a 5-star rating and a nice review. Go visit patreon.com/the7th-rule to be a part of all of the fun. Walter, did you love this episode, watching it for the first time? What were your thoughts?
I liked it. I liked it quite a bit. It had a style of its own, which is primarily close-ups. The whole show was almost shot in close-ups, which made it very simple, easy to follow. It was kind of, I thought, a tour de force for Bill. It was I imagine that he really enjoyed doing this episode. As an actor, I could see where he would. So there was that. Leonard was delightful. The guest actor, I recognized him, but I didn't know from where. Was he with the lead on Buck Rogers or one of those shows? He had his own TV series.
I don't know. I really recognize the lady, and I have no idea from what. So I'll look at that while you continue speaking.
Who?
The lady. This lady right here. The
Father Knows Best. She was the daughter on Father Knows Best.
She's very recognizable. Oh, it's Eddie. Eddie Paskey was Lieutenant Leslie. I know Eddie Paskey. The actor that played Zefram Cochrane was Glenn Corbett.
Yes. And what series was he on? He was 6'2", the bluest eyes I've ever seen. And they really bounced at you,
Oh my God, he was in so many great shows. Listen to these. Okay. We're getting right into this, aren't we? Okay, so here are some of the shows. I'm just going to skip to the ones that I've heard of. The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Bob Hope Presents. You may have heard of Star Trek. The Magical World of Disney. What's another big one? Bonanza. Night Gallery. Mod Squad. The Stranger, The Young and the Restless. Cannon. Gunsmoke. God, so many of these. And
I
probably
thought he had his own series.
Maybe the Rockford Files. Oh, The Doctors. He was in 455 episodes of The Doctors. Fantasy Island, The Fall Guy, Manimal. That was a show I loved. Manimal. Simon and Simon. Dallas. Remember that soap opera Dallas? 20 episodes of that.
Well, he has a leading man face to me. When I saw him, I was like, this guy could have easily auditioned for the role of Kirk and not gotten the role, but gotten a callback type of move. He has that leading man look to him, kind of like a Superman. I would cast him to be Superman if I was, in the casting agent. But I thought he did a fantastic job, playing opposite Kirk in this episode.
Series regulars that he did were in A Man's World, Route 66, and The Road West.
Yeah.
What did you think about the story, Walter? I mean, the whole idea of this man marooned on this planet with this alien. What did you think about that story?
Well, it drew me in. I think if I had been maybe a little bit more conscious when I watched it, I might have guessed how it was going to end, because it's a very pat ending. It was the wrap it up, put it in the box, and tie it with a pink ribbon ending. I didn't see it coming, which I say I should have, because it was staring at me. Just said, "This is how it's going to end."
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the fact that it seemed very intimate to me, because it was shot almost exclusively in singles and the doubles, and the actors were all right there in your face. I thought Leonard was, as always, quite good as Spock, and DeForest was the Dr. McCoy that we've grown to know and love. They cut to the bridge, and you get to see George and Jimmy and Nichelle, which was very nice. It was a second-year episode, but Chekhov wasn't in it, and as I say, as we all agreed, none of us had seen it before, so it was a new experience. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than I thought I might, even. But there you are. I thought the special effects were very primitive. I think this companion, as it's called, really showed the limit of what we were capable of doing in terms of special effects back in the day. But at the time, we didn't know any better, so it was okay.
It's interesting, just a little piece of trivia. So I mentioned earlier that, what was his name? Glenn Corbett was a regular in a show called A Man's World. Well, Eleanor Donahue, who played Commissioner Hetford, was in a show called Woman's World. That's kind of weird. Never heard of either, but I'm like, are those connected? What's going on there? That's just a fun piece of trivia. So, Sirach, though, first time you've ever seen this, what do you think?
I really loved this episode. I thought it was great that the adventure started on shuttlecraft, and it was off of the Enterprise, so that automatically puts me in a different kind of more, I would say, in adventure mode, right? So I'm thinking, oh, this is adventurous. They're in a shuttlecraft. There's something going to happen. So I enjoyed that right off the bat. Some of the things I thought were, I only started to guess where they were going to go with the story when McCoy came to her, the patient at that time, and asked her about, well, she went on this whole rant about, I feel so lonely. I've never been loved. I've never been loved. I was like, oh, here we go. This is going to be it's going to be put together like that. But the things that jump out at me were, even though the stages and the stuff looked, simple, it was colorful for me. And it felt like I was somewhere else. It did feel, with the purple skies and the bright plants. It brought me to another place, and it made me feel like I was somewhere else. I enjoyed that aspect of it. I thought the set designers built an amazing looking shuttlecraft that was used as
the Galileo. Loved it.
I thought it was amazingly detailed and looked like it could fly. If it was, given some, if it had the right equipment to make it look like the schematics were something really nice. It looked beautiful. And so I was taken away with the colors, with the set design, with that aspect of it, and it made me feel a little bit like Gone with the Wind. I haven't seen that movie that many times, but there's a cinematic colorfulness to some of the landscape backdrops that I remember, the orange hues and whatnot. And I felt some of that aspect, Walter. I don't know if that sounds too far off the mark.
No. Oh, and I would never have thought of going with the Wind, but then none of them looked like Clark Gable, so I didn't.
Well, I mean, the guy with the blue eyes. I mean,
Yeah.
Corbett is he's not an ugly guy to look at. He's pretty
No.
handsome, and like I
Yes.
said, he has leading man qualities. So with him and on this planet, my first question, like we're problem solving as we watch episodes. So as soon as I see him, I'm thinking, boy, he looks good for a stranded, guy.
Totally. His outfit was his outfit was ironed and beautifully pressed and washed, and you had a
perfectly shaved
haircut. Yeah, and shit. I was like, how's this possible? But I guess she handles everything,
Yeah. Yeah, she does. I mean, that was the story unfolding in front of me. And so my curiosity about what's going on here, my suspicion matched the suspicion of Kirk. And I thought that's another thing that's when you write well, you're supposed to write what the audience is thinking and put that into the dialogue. And I felt like Kirk and Spock's suspicion of this man matched my suspicion. And so I felt like they were probing accurately and rightly so. And therefore I was on the hook with the story as soon as I start to say, yeah, what is going on here? Oh, why do these artifacts? Why do they not dated properly? Why does what's going on here? And so as the story unfolds, my curiosity kept getting a little bit exposed to more of the storyline. I can agree with Walter about the special effects being limited to the time period. I called it a gumdrop because it looked like a see-through kind of gumdrop bead looking thing.
You know what I compared it to? One of those Jello dishes that have like fruit in them. Remember back in the day, there'd always be a lady that would bring to a potluck. She'd bring this Jello dish that had like things floating in it, like cornbread and grapes, and you're like, "What is going on in here?"
Yeah, that's funny, but yeah, I like the story. There's an element of the story that I thought was great too, that intrigued my imagination. I wish they kind of explored a little bit more on, because my mind wanders when I see these things unfold. But the thing that interests me was that Zefram Cochrane was the guy who created the warp drive, right, or the warp engine, essentially. So he's like Oppenheimer or something to that effect, right? And he never got to essentially fully see what he created in use like they are doing on the Enterprise. And to me, that gap there is something that interests me as a historian or somebody who likes to study sciences. I like to know how Tesla would look at how his inventions are working today and how they've improved or helped the world and society, or anybody else who's an inventor on that level, to say, like Henry Ford, to see where the automobile has gone to this day. I feel like the curiosity of that person would be something that I would like to be digging into. The questions that they have about how what has been seen, and exploring the universe and that kind of thing. Walter, do you agree with that, or?
Yeah, it's a great thought.
Zefram Cochrane is a character that is revisited later on in Star Trek. Yes. In the movie First Contact, directed by Jonathan Frakes. This was the first movie after Generations. There was the last one that kind of mixed the original series with the Next Generation. That was called Star Trek Generations. And then in 1996, they released, was it 96? I think it was, 96. They released First Contact, which was Next Generation's first movie on its own. And it basically was about the story of Zefram Cochrane. When he invented warp drive, they went back in the past and they saw it in, I think the year was 2054 or 2064, I think. Anyway, it was played by our good buddy, Mr. James Cromwell, played beautifully by him. So he was amazing in it. really, an amazing, fantastic movie. Anybody that's seen it does love the movie, I would think. I can't imagine they don't like it. It's my favorite. So we get to learn more about Zefram Cochrane and how he invented warp drive and what led to it. And, you get all of his backstory and all that. It's really a fun movie. But, and the Borg are involved, of course, because they're involved in everything.
I got to see that. I haven't gotten there yet.
So
you never know.
If I were to nitpick, and it really comes under the heading of nitpicking, one could make the argument that the decision to stay on the planet was a little facile, was a little easy to make. All of a sudden, okay, it's done. We're going to stay. It didn't really bother me, but looking at it now from a different perspective, from one who's supposed to critique what I saw, I might take a trifle umbrage at that the way that evolved.
Mm-hmm. That's my one big. It's not for me. It's not a nitpick. I have a very strong feeling on it. I was actually aghast that the sick lady, didn't have a choice. They never gave her the choice of whether she wants to stay in this prison for the rest of her life. Because for all we know, she's been inhabited by this alien. How do we know she has free will above the alien? How do we know? A lady who's drunk, for example, isn't kind of really in her right mind, and we can't take advantage of anything like that. So a lady that's inhabited by an alien is also, we don't know if she's in her right mind. We don't know if she has free will. We don't know if she even knows what's going on, or if she's just sitting there banging, trying to get out, banging on the inside of her own head, or even if she's just gone completely. And yet we got these four dudes that are making a decision for us, saying, all right, you're going to stay here. You're all set. Yeah. And the other guy's like, great, I got a female physical companion with me for the rest of my days. This is awesome. And basically, for all we know, we don't know, but for all we know, he's just using her body, and this alien is using her body to inhabit this body. And so when I saw that, I was like, I kept waiting for. Now, this was a different time, so I wasn't sure it was going to happen. I was afraid it wouldn't, but I kept waiting for Kirk to say, well, now hang on. We need to split the alien from the person to find out if this is what the person in fact wants. Maybe she does, but we need to know. Or I thought that the alien, when it didn't look like anybody seemed to care, I thought the alien might say, no, it is wrong for me to force blah, 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 blah. I will stay here. You guys go without me, or something like that. But never happened. But that's just me.
It's not just you.
It's not just you. Yeah, it's not just you. I thought this story was told from a really male-dominated perspective of a whole to serve man, and then serving the man, and the man needs this, and the man needs that. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And the other thing that really rubbed me and irked me when I even heard the word was this same character that we're talking about. And that it is, what was her name?
Companion?
No, not the companion. The Commissioner Hedford. Miss Hedford, yeah. When Miss Hedford first arrives to this place and sees this guy or whatever, and the revelation is made. Kirk says, "Why are we here then?" And he says, "I know why you're here, but you're not going to like it." And he says, "You're here to be my companions or whatnot."
Mm-hmm.
Her line and her reaction was visceral. It was disgusting. I wrote it down. That's disgusting.
Exactly, which is why you would think.
Yeah. So that
are we sure she did a 180?
To her, when she was healthy in her right mind at that moment, the person herself says, "That's disgusting. I already know what you're trying to think over here. I'm the only woman around. This is disgusting. You're gonna, and so it's like she almost.
And then she said, "I'm outraged. I'm disgusted." Like later on, and then the one line that made me laugh out loud, honestly, was when this lech, Zefram Cochrane, goes, "Hey, maybe I could give you a bath."
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh my god!"
And even the comeback line, she says, "Thank you for noticing that I needed a bath." That was a weird line in general to me too. Thank you for noticing.
That's a funny line.
It is. Yeah, she was being sarcastic.
No, it's funny, but it was just like, it clearly they weren't getting off to the right. You know, he was coming on and she was turned off. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was set in the beginning. So I agree with you, Ryan, that to have no consideration for this woman and her family, her personal feelings, her own autonomy. They just were like, all right, let's leave her back. What are they going to tell her family when they go back to Starfleet?
That there was an alien that inhabited her because this dude liked her. She didn't like him. But then once the alien inhabited her, she did like him. And so they're like, all right, bye. See you never.
But you knew with that casting, the beautiful girl, the handsome, they had to get together. You know, it had to end that way.
You're right.
Yeah, I would have liked some. It should have been expressed a little bit of flirtation in the dialogue between the two of them that was more subtle, but that grew a little bit more as time went on, so that it was something that appeared to the audience like something that she wanted, like she had a desire for him, and there was an attraction there. The only line that they gave for that was to support that was, "I'm so lonely, I've never been loved, and I'm gonna die without being loved."
Did it cross your mind for even a moment that "I've never been loved" was a euphemism for "I'm still a virgin"?
Could be.
Yeah, I did.
I mean, the way what she's implying, that she's just that's the entire social aspect has not been delved into, that she's just been busy with work. That's what it seemed like.
Yeah. That was kind of awkward to me right away. As soon as I heard "that's disgusting," I was like, "Oh, she doesn't like this. She doesn't think he's as handsome as I do." That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. So that was my one big. Yeah, that was my one big thing where it kind of took a hard turn. And I'm not. Yeah. And it's not even. I mean, like, obviously we get it. Like, male-driven thing, and this was the 60s and all those things. Like, it all makes sense. It's all pretty obvious how that happened. But even just beyond that, though, what Star Trek usually does well, even if it is 60 years old, and even in those times, is free will. And that's where they miss. That's where I go, Star Trek is usually better at that. Like, the 60s were the 60s, I get it. But free will is something that, they usually take into consideration. But anyway, other than that, I mean, that was the one big thing for me. And I kept watching, going like, are they really going to do this? Where is it going to go back to normalcy? But other than
that's where I agree with Walter. I think they could have put a bigger twist on the end of this, and it didn't have to go down like that. I agree with you too, Ryan. The entity could have said, now that I've experienced what it's like to be in this body, and I've learned that I need to let you humans be with humans and whatnot, and I'm going to find my own peace in the world. Abducting her and having them both live, I don't know. It just the idea was growing old together. I think that was what they were trying to highlight as a thematic, theme for this episode, was growing old together, and what the value in that is, or mortality, and how we should cherish mortality.
So, speaking of growing old together, that was a question that I had. Did I miss it? It's very possible I missed it. Did they explain why now they would start to age as before he didn't age?
I don't think they've explained it. I think we were just supposed to, I guess, assume that now that the entity is no longer being the entity. It's now it's kind of giving away its magic powers to be a human. It's just that was my assumption there. Yeah, but we gotta jump on a quick break here, and when we get back, we're gonna talk more about this episode. I bet we'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Sir Rock Lofton and Walter Koenig. Here are the trivioids of the week. Sakuro's disease is extremely rare. There's nothing wrong with the USS Galileo, but nothing works. Commissioner Headford is food to a starving man, according to Zefram Cochrane. Commissioner Headford feels infuriated, deeply put upon, and absolutely outraged. That part made me laugh because I was like, how do you really feel? The companion saved Zefram Cochrane's life. Zefram Cochrane died 150 years ago. The companion drains Mr. Cochrane. The companion imparted to Spock a rather quaint, old-fashioned electric shock of respectable voltage. Bones prefers carrots to sticks. Apparently, art like a hammer is a saying, and Zefram Cochrane might try to plant a fig tree. So that was it, just to close the book on that ending. I just felt like they had a beautiful story, which was this lady that was lonely, didn't realize it maybe, this man that was lonely, even though he had the companion that didn't know the man was lonely. All these things, they fit together perfectly and seamlessly, and they built that up perfectly. The one part they missed was giving the human lady the opportunity to make that decision for herself. Like that was the one nugget for me.
And it could have been a line, right? It could have gone.
It could have been one line.
Do you want to be here? Let me speak with Miss Headford, and
right.
and she says, yes, I want to be here. Let me go.
The alien splits off, and then Headford actually says, you know what? I'm of sound mind and body. I feel fine, and I think I want to do this. And if anything changes, I'll let you know. And they go, okay, bye. But anyway, Walter, but there was a ton to like about this episode. I actually liked a lot about it. Is heart like a hammer a saying? Because Bone said she got a heart like a hammer. Like she's all up and up. I guess not.
Is there a question there? I missed
it. Is that like an old saying that I've never heard of? She's got a heart like a hammer?
I've heard she has a kidney like a pneumatic drill.
And lungs like a chainsaw.
No,
funny, okay. I'll take that as a no.
I wanted to make a point that jumped out to me in this episode. I thought it was the good use of the universal translator, which is an idea here in Star Trek that's original to Star Trek, or something that's consistent with the roots of Star Trek. The universal translator, which has found its way across all of the shows, and is actually one of the main reasons why we're able to communicate seamlessly and have watch these scenes play out for us with these alien versus human contact. So I enjoy watching them take the universal translator, adapting it in some way, modifying it, not only using it in part of the storyline, but also the modification of it in order to communicate. I thought that was a clever thing that Gene Kuhn highlighted.
And yeah. If I had, again, this is nitpicking. If I had one other question about the story or how it was produced, I'd want to know, how is it that Mr. Spock can be shocked and flipped about and thrown about the way he was, and then when you come in on a close-up, when Dr. McCoy reaches him, I think it was, it's like he just stepped out of the showroom. I mean, there's not a muss anywhere. And they come in a real tight close-up on him. So, it didn't ruin the story for me, obviously. But I thought, come on. Okay, I know Mr. Spock, has is impervious to a lot of harm, but you got to show that he's been,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's really what it is. I think they just say, "Hey, he's Vulcan," whatever. You know what I mean? Like they don't get too much into the deep. But yeah, it would have been nice to see him like, with all of his hair singed off, no eyebrows, things like that. That would have been fun. But like,
I think it would have brought another element to Star Trek. Another side of Mr. Spock. I mean, everybody's embraced Spock because he was so together. That's the key word, together. But to see that it was possible, that there was a vulnerability there that wasn't previously explored, would have been interesting, I think, for the audience. Even, like you said, just must hair, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like those shots myself. I thought the shots themselves looked good, even though I agree with what you're saying about Spock looking way too sharp and clean for the moment. But I thought the shots themselves, there was a two shot with McCoy and Spock in that moment that looked beautiful. It was lit wonderfully. The two actors just looked like a headshot that you would sign at a convention. I thought this is one that you would pull.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just a beautiful shot of the two of them, well lit. And that's where I thought the director, you're absolutely right, Walter. He did do a lot of close ups, which is what an actor loves the most when we're filming, right? It's like that's when you give your best stuff to me. I think it's when you're like, okay, the close up, time for your close up. And that's when you lean in a little bit more into the performance, and that's when that's when you have these kind of headshot type moments. So I thought it was full of those really well lit and staged two shots and one shots. Kept me interested. I was locked in while I was watching it.
Well, there was something that I really liked about this, and it was, like the cinematography you guys touched on, I thought was great, especially when they were doing the little scarf or whatever she has over the lens. You know what I mean? Like to kind of re-see how she used to see Zefram Cochrane through the lens of, that filtered jello thing. And I know our pal, Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, mentioned something about that. She said she loved this episode. So I can definitely see that part of it. That was a really nice, beautiful moment where she's kind of like remembering what she used to look at him like, like with the thing in front of it, the veil, because her scarf changed when she, or maybe it didn't change, but it got added to her outfit at the end there. And so suddenly she's doing this and she's looking. So I thought that was really nice, kind of a poignant moment.
Did anybody else think like the way that Shatner delivered the line at the towards the end there when they meet up and she's like, I just want to feel the ground under my feet. I just want to walk and feel the air and enjoy the sunshine. And Shatner says something, or Kirk says something to the effect of like, go ahead, we've got plenty of, we've got some time. Like
you two little rascals, you go for it. You little.
I know what you're gonna do. You're about to go make out over there. Go ahead. We'll buy some time for you. I thought that was kind of hilarious. It was one of those nods to like like a moment, a hat tip. But I also wanted to say that when she came out and had those too many voices, when she was like, "We are us, we are one, we are," and I heard I was like, I could barely hear one person nagging at me. But if this is going to be in echo stereo, he's going to be wanting out of there in no time. Check back in about 2 weeks.
Well, also there was the moment where Zefram Cochrane, towards the end, he says, "Don't tell them about me." I guess he's just saying, I want to be left alone. I don't want them to find me, or I don't want them to know my story at all, but I'm not sure. What did you guys think of that? I wasn't sure how to interpret that.
First of all, why wouldn't he want them to know his story? It's number one, and
Yeah.
that doesn't make sense to me. And that's a good question. Don't tell them about me. I don't get it, unless it would ruin what we know about science and we know about the human lifespan and all this stuff. There's a whole different dimension that as human beings we've never explored. What do you think, Sirach?
Yeah, I couldn't figure that one out either. That kind of went against my natural inclination that he's a scientist / explorer who has fantasies of traveling the universe. And what he's doing is precisely the opposite by staying stationary on this place for indefinitely. I think it doesn't add up to me for the kind of mind that he has. It just if if Tesla had the opportunity to explore the galaxy or the universe, I think he would take it. He wouldn't say, "No, I'll stay here in Brooklyn." Like, no, I think that it'd be like he would want to go because his whole life is about exploring and studying and observing. And I just think it's the ending I wasn't happy with. I understand it was convenient. I had to look up the Judas goat because
I was just going to say that. I was literally just looking at that note where I was like, well, at least it made me learn something. I literally Googled the Judas goat and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So, but you were saying about that?
I didn't know what it was. I thought it was a biblical thing, but you hear Judas, so you think that, but I guess it is in some way. It's leading them to the slaughter, so it has some biblical reference. But it's that the goat that leads the other ones to the slaughter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who gets their life spared, I guess, essentially.
Yeah. For those that don't know, it's basically like it's a basketball term. It's about Steph Curry, and
the goat.
The goat. No, that would be a Michael Jordan story. Basically, yeah, it's a goat that's trained to find a wild herd and then somehow, lead them back to the ranchers or whomever, and then they get slaughtered. So it's called the Judas goat because it betrays them, assuming. But that's, man, good thing it's an animal, because a human would feel terrible about themselves. So like go find 100 other humans, be like, hey guys, follow me. Like, oh boy, there's great grass over here to chew. Oh, you're going to love it. Come on. Don't ignore the smell when you get close. It's okay. Just keep getting closer. And then they all get slaughtered, and then they go do it again. Anyway, had you ever heard of that, Walter?
What's that?
Had you ever heard of the Judas goat? And they also say a Judas cow.
No, I haven't. No, I haven't. As a matter of fact, I don't think I picked that up when I watched it, simply because of my hearing problems. And there was some dialogue that I missed. I missed a lot of the stuff that was on the universal interpreter. What do you? Yeah,
universal translator.
Translator. Yeah,
translate. Yeah, I missed a lot of that. I just couldn't. It was the way they recorded it. It was supposed to be a little different environmentally, and it certainly was for me. I didn't follow a lot of that.
What did you guys think of the, I think 2, maybe 3 scenes with the crew on the Enterprise, with Scotty, Uhura, and Sulu? What do you think of those? We haven't covered that yet.
I'm glad they had an opportunity. I'm glad that there was some time given to them. I felt, and this is strictly, I don't know what the hell it is. Anyway, Michelle looked so great. Uhura looked so beautiful. And I kept thinking, why don't they do this more with her? Why don't they, feature her? in episodes because she's such a gorgeous lady, and she performs extremely well. She does her job extremely well. So that crossed my mind. That crossed my mind. I've always thought that Jimmy was a better actor than anybody gave him credit, and I don't think he was challenged enough because I think he could have really contributed more than he did to the show. George is fine. George is fine, but George's role has always been kind of two-dimensional, like Chekhov's was, but even more so two-dimensional. Reading out the information on his panels, and that was pretty much it. So I was pleased to see that there was time given to them, but it only made me want them to have more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I couldn't second how beautiful Nichelle looks in this episode. There was a nice two shot of her and Montgomery Scott kind of on the bridge there where she was over the shoulder. And I thought the two of them looked great. I thought she was stunning. That was also a nice kind of overhead angular shot of George Takei at the helm. I liked seeing that camera angle, and it was a nice angle for him. It was complimentary to the performance. But yeah, no, I think I like that. I thought he gave one of my favorite lines in this episode when Nichelle says, "But there's thousands of them," referring to the asteroids and how many they would have to find, and he says, "Yes, and we're going to look at them. We're going to look at every last one at a time," or something to that effect. Yeah, and I like the way he delivered that. It was one of my favorite lines. It just showed that he's going to be looking for his captain, and so I felt that spirit there.
Did Nichelle deliver one of her lines in a Scotty accent? Did you guys notice that?
I did.
And I had to play it back, and I said, did she just, and I'm trying to find, oh, there it is. She says, "It's a big galaxy, Mr. Scott." And I was like, did she just, was that supposed to be like a playful thing? Was that in the script? Did she add that herself? Was that, because it was subtle. She didn't go super ham bone on it, but she did say, "It's a big galaxy, Mr. Scott," to Scotty in a Scotty impression. And I was like, where did that come from? Is that just them being pals on the show, But there was a moment where I thought, I guess it's just going to be Kirk, Spock, and McCoy this entire episode, because the first 30 minutes, they didn't even go back to anybody else. So I was like, wow, I've never seen an episode of Star Trek, I don't think, where it was just three of the characters and everybody else is off that week. Maybe it's around December, I don't know. And so I just kind of thought that that's where it was going to go. And then right when I was having that thought, suddenly we see them on the bridge, and I was happy to see that. I'm like, great, what are we going to get? What's this B plot? And then we didn't get much of a B plot. What were they doing? They were looking for them, but they didn't really have a puzzle to solve or an alien race to outwit, or, there wasn't really a thing. And they kind of made me think what we have is two good things. We've got the bridge crew that we like and that are performing well and we like a lot. And then we have this story on the planet that we like, and it's great. And I kind of felt like I wish they would have either just stayed on the planet and we don't need all that else. Let's just assume that the Enterprise is looking for them, because they are. We don't need to see them looking for them. And then we can get way more development for the lady and for their decisions and all this. Or give us more of the bridge crew getting, more to do, and then shorten this thing. But I wasn't really, because I liked both and I wanted to see a little bit more for both sides to get something. But what we got was 80% for both to me. I didn't mean to upset you, Walter.
Yeah, they didn't give the bridge crew much. Actually, I didn't even know they were going to do any such scenes on the Enterprise at all. I felt like it was all going to be that little shuttlecraft in the planet surface. But you know, my thing for the thing I would have liked to see and done would have been. I felt like the Zefram Cochrane character was too content, calm, and collected for a person who hasn't seen somebody in 100 years.
That's a good point.
And good at speaking English, by the way.
I mean, just in general,
he's not
like
talking.
Yeah, because there should have been some more mad scientist to him with sketches and stuff, and where
afro.
he should have looked a little bit more disheveled. He should have been more excited to talk to somebody and have so much to say to them. Remember, he hasn't talked to another person in 100 years. I mean, if I don't talk to somebody in 2 weeks, I got a bunch of stuff to say to him. It's just like this is 100 years worth of stories, or even questions about like if I go away from Earth for 100 years and I come back, I want to know everything. I want to know, are you guys got flying cars?
I want to know
what's the
150 Super Bowl winners.
I want to know what the Super Bowl and I want to know what the baseball. I want to know everything. Tell me who the Michael Jordan of this era is. Like, I want to know. I'm gonna have so many freaking questions. You're gonna beg me to shut up, or you're gonna give me something to watch or read, to keep me occupied. So I felt like I felt like the guy's curiosity wasn't big enough. His own mental stability was too firm. He should have been a little bit more unstable, a little unhinged, a little crazy scientist, mad scientist, a little bit more like the Back to the Future.
Doc.
Doc. Yes.
Didn't Kirk even say that? Didn't Kirk even say you're?
Yeah, I think he alluded.
Yeah,
I think he alluded to it. Yeah,
good point.
But even having this entity to deal with and to interact with, that's not enough of a plug into the world you grew up and came from. That's a different whole nother experience. I just felt like he should have been a lot more rambunctious, talkative, maybe even all over the place, and trying to settle them down and just say, hey, we'll fill you in. I know you have 1,000 questions, but we need to know what the source of this thing that's causing our ship not to fly or whatever, and get to that kind of conversation.
Yeah, and on the point of 1,000 questions, I've got one for you guys. Who gets the home run of the episode? We're at that point, everybody. It's the big one. Walter Koenig. Who gets?
I was thinking about that. This is the first time that I actually thought about it in advance of the show.
Nice.
And I think it's Bill. I think Captain Kirk, I think he was very, very strong, and I felt it was dimensional. I thought there was a lot of stuff going on. I thought that he was in command, and you saw that in his performance. The Captain Kirk, who is a leader of a whole bunch of other people. So although I thought everybody did well, I thought Eleanor Donahue did well. I thought Spock, Leonard was, really good. I get so comfortable watching him. It just feels like this is somebody that I'd always want on my side, because he's so in control and he seems so available in some ways. I mean, I know he's the stoic Vulcan, but in some ways he feels very available. But ultimately, before I run off and start talking about other Star Trek episodes or other series, because I'm so freaking old and my mind wanders, I'm going to just stop with Captain Kirk.
Nice. What about you, Cirroc Lofton?
Well, first I want to say that I enjoyed the music in this episode. I forgot to mention that. I thought the music was lovely. It was very It was very complimentary. It put me in a good state of mind. But I'm going to have to agree with Walter that I think William Shatner was the outstanding performance in this episode. His arrogance, his bravado was actually being used against him. And I thought McCoy gave a great example about, when he says, you tried being a soldier. Why don't you try being a diplomat? I thought that was a great line in this episode. It gave a little perspective from Kirk, like maybe my approach. I got to try a different approach. So yeah, Captain Kirk is the number one home run hitter in this, but I want to give Dr. McCoy a very good honorary mention for just those lines that he delivered. Another one was when he said, "A blind man can see that with a cane."
With a cane.
I thought, I think that's what he said. A blind man can see that with a cane. But he was very good at just being complimentary. And I thought his scenes with he interacts with Kirk. He's doing scenes with Spock, and he's kind of a no nonsense, tell it how it is, straightforward guy. He doesn't play around with his performances. It's really kind of the conscience of the show in some way. So I want to give him honorary mention. But yeah, William Shatner.
Yeah, great stuff. Also, quick note on director Ralph Sinensky. He's done 7 Star Trek episodes, directed 7, 4 of which, this is the first of 4 in season 2. So we've got 3 more coming up just in this season. Yeah, honestly, I thought, it's funny, I thought it was William Shatner and DeForest Kelley as well. Surprisingly, I thought it was going to be the guest stars because they were great. She's radiant. She's got very expressive eyes. And I was like, what do I know her from? Maybe she's just that good that you feel like you've seen her before. But Kirk's very natural. He definitely has his way about him. And this felt like a very Kirky episode. I'm like, oh, this is where the impressions of Kirk come from, because there were the pauses in how he spoke, like he was doing that. I was like, oh, here's where the impressions come from. And I thought DeForest Kelley, I could finally see it too. A lot of people really like Bones, and I was never really a Bones fan and never, but I hadn't seen much. But he has this thing where he kind of lifts up one eyebrow when he's thinking, and, he does a thing, him and I wonder if he and Spock have opposite eyebrows that they do. Like one is Vulcan, the other one is human. I don't know if they coordinated that. But anyway, I was like, okay, I could see it. He's got some good mannerisms. He's got some good things that get picked up on the close-ups that you guys mentioned. They did a lot of in this episode. Anyway, those 2 get home runs for me. That's it for us there. But here are some other people that hit home runs. Let me pull them up because we like them. And their names are Homer Frizzell. I think he's a Yankees fan too, Walter. We'll have to find out. Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Seagull, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackman, Tom TJ, Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Titus Muller, Dr. Muhammad Noor, Tierney C. Diekman, Anil O. Palat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu and Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, My Live from Tokyo, The Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Julie Manosfi, Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Tim Baum, Chris Sternett, Dylan Powell, Peter Draymore, Chris Garris, and of course, Jason M. Oken. I bet he's seen this episode before. And Greg K. Wickstrom out in Hawaii. All right, let's get into that free-for-all, everybody. We will be right back on the 7th rule. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the 7th rule. It is time for the free-for-all. Finally, here it is, the fun time. Melissa Longo's joining us.
Hello, hello.
So is Jason M. Oken. Everybody's like, where's Jason? There he is.
Hello, everybody.
We also have the Dark Lord, Chris McGee, in a cool 7th rule sweater. Nice. We have Allison Leach Hyde in the desert of New Mexico. And Chris Garris with the fun background. That is pretty awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
going to say 8-1.
Walter, do you have any guesses as to what all of the voters of the world gave it as an average, or what it averaged out on IMDb? Because I know you're always on IMDb.
That's interesting. I'd say an 85, 8.5.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have any guesses?
I want to say 7.6.
I was going to say 7.0 even.
It's interesting enough. I think it's probably the ratings for the viewers suffer a little bit. It's not my personal view. It's probably in the high sevens, 7, 8 maybe. But again, that's just.
Well, the answer is 7.2. 7.2 is the final answer. It's an average. So there's some people that have never watched Star Trek before. They're like, Star Trek sucks. I'm giving it a 1. But anyway, did we get any non-appearance mentions? I didn't hear one. Oh, did we get a some kind or some sort of?
I heard one.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
I
great,
heard
Sarah.
one too.
Yeah, I wrote it down here. What does it say? Some sort of dampening feel.
Is that it? Any
That's
others?
correct.
And
That was
I
one.
thought they said some sort of gaseous entity. I thought that they had mentioned it. Some sort of, I've got fart on the brain.
That was me. I had a burrito. Sorry, that was some sort of gaseous entity.
I think you got it backwards. It was a brain fart. Chris
There
McGee,
was
what
a
else?
second one, though.
Yeah.
McCoy, observing the relationship between Cochrane and the companion, said, almost a symbiosis of some kind, a sort of joining.
Yes, that's the one I heard, where he said it twice in one sentence. Symbiosis of some kind. What would that be, like a semicolon? And then
Sort
a joining of some
joining,
kind.
yeah.
Some sort of joining. Anyway. Well, Melissa Longo, can you get us back on the right? What is that behind you? Melissa, your background. No,
It's behind the scenes.
No, the other, there it is. Okay.
Oh, well, this is an accident.
Oh, this old thing, she says. What did you think of this episode?
Well, if I'm gonna be frank, it was a mixed bag for me. I'll tell you what worked. I love, and this is probably true for all of the original series. I love the use of color. It's just the color choices complement each other. They're vivid, they're rich, it's so beautiful to watch. I love watching these. And and I have to mention Zefram Cochrane's eyeballs. Oh my freaking goodness. They're so blue. And then I love the way they used the music in this as well. For example, when Spock and McCoy and Kirk are all looking out of Cochrane's house, and Cochrane is communicating with the companion, and when the camera sets on each face, the music changes just a little bit and then intensifies. And then we see the reveal of the companion, and it's like, da-da-da. It's like really good use of music. Overall, I enjoyed it. There were a few misses that I will say for things left unsaid. So if you're not a patron already, become a patron, and you'll find out what those are.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Melissa Longo. Jason M. Oken is here. I think this was your first time watching this episode, right? What do you think of it?
Absolutely. I've never seen this before. Although it's not one of my most favorites, it's certainly, I think, an underrated episode of the second season. I think it's certainly a little unusual. And there's a reason, I guess, why they decided not to air it basically early in the season. It was the second episode filmed. And Walter, I know you mentioned earlier that you have met Eleanor Donahue on set. They actually started shooting this episode. The first shot of it was after lunch, after they finished Cat's Paw. So maybe that's why you crossed paths with her. So they basically shot the first day after lunch. So again, it's a wonderful, wonderful episode. I think what stands out to me, Melissa said, certainly, Jerry Finnerman's work and the lighting. I think Ralph Sinensky's directing is very, very nuanced, and you really have to sort of carefully look at this. I think this may have been an introduction of a 9mm lens to Star Trek. To sort of take advantage of, or at least, be able to use a small, relatively small soundstage to show, the distance and all. There's a lot to say about this episode, but again, to me, what stands out is the cinematography, the directing. I think Eleanor Donahue's performance is very nuanced. If you watch it carefully from the beginning to the end, how it starts in a shuttlecraft when she's strong, then she's kind of desperate and dying, and then a completely different performance when she's combined with a companion. So there's certainly that. There's also, to me, George Duning's music is tremendous. I mean, it's one of the episodes that actually had the original score, and they reused the same theme over and over in other episodes. But this is, there's certainly a wonderful companion theme here. The effects for the time were marvelous. If you watched with the original effects, they do still work. And even, Bill Shatner's performance is great here as well. And, I certainly don't want to forget to mention Gene Kuhn's script. It's one of the few that nobody else touched. He wrote it the beginning to the end. He got, maybe got some input, but it's one of those sort of themes. He wrote Arena, Devil in the Dark, Errand of Mercy, kind of like that on his own. Obviously, he was producing, so his hands were on it. But again, there's a lot more to say, and it's a very enjoyable episode.
Good to hear. Thanks very much, Jason M. Oken. Chris, Judas Goat McGee. He leads people to slaughter because he's the Dark Lord. What did you guys that don't know this, he's got that as his name. I didn't say that. I'm not being mean. What did you think of this episode?
It's okay. I like being mean to myself. No, it's an okay episode, to be sure. Honestly, though, not exactly one of my favorites, and not just because we never see Chekhov in it. I'm not sure I can put my finger on exactly why, but I might have a few ideas. Like, for example, I dislike the way that not just this, but many productions in the 1960s depict women as hysterical, especially when this particular woman is a high-ranking official who presumably wouldn't react in such a way. So it seemed a little unrealistic for her to, when she hears the news that it was Cochrane that probably marooned them there on the planet, she acts all hysterical. So I found that to be a little bit unrealistic. Also, her demands and general attitude during the first part of the episode, while great for a strong a female lead character, it seemed to me to continue that tired cliche of whenever we have a guest star that's like a high-ranking official on the show, they've always got to be demanding and have this attitude, and that always, I get a little tired of that after a while. One of the interesting things was the war that was mentioned at the beginning and then at the end. The commissioner was supposed to stop this war, right? It seems kind of like an afterthought in the episode. It was mentioned those two times, and with nary a word about it, I don't think, during the bulk of the middle of the episode. And they already had that, ticking time issue with her disease. They certainly didn't need a second one. So I think that's what probably could have done without that little plot thread. And of course, despite Star Trek doing its absolute best to remain timeless, which it always does, almost always perfectly, sometimes little things poke holes in that little veneer, such as the Commissioner Hedford's flip hairstyle and the headscarf, both of which look great on her, but they are trends that were very commonplace in the 1960s, so it kind of places it in that time frame. But otherwise, yeah, it's a certainly very, very decent episode, and I enjoy it very much. It's hard for me to find fault during any episodes of Star Trek, and it's hard for me to even find these few little things on this one. But regardless, I did enjoy the episode greatly. For the memorable quote, the one that always stands out to me is Uhura's line, "It's a big galaxy, Mr. Scott."
She said it in Scotty's accent too, didn't she?
Yeah, she did.
That was so unexpected.
I
All
bet
right.
that was her idea.
So
I bet
that was.
playful.
Walter, were they pals outside of work?
What's that?
Nichelle and Jimmy, were they pals?
Were they pals? Yeah. There is a whole story to be told. We did a convention. We did a convention on the East Coast. It was before we had agents, and we were contacted by the promoters directly and lots of different things. But one night we were invited to do a couple of radio shows, and it was Jimmy, George, Nichelle, and I. We were all there, and the first show was like at 9:00 at night. And I'm not going to go on forever with this, I promise. I just want you to know I'm still in control. I'm still in control. And anyway, so we did the first radio show, and everybody got along great. We were laughing, ha ha, ho ho, and it was a very pleasant experience. And then we went on to the second show. George said, "Well, I'm getting very tired." So George went back to the hotel. So it was Jimmy, Nichelle, and I. Well, the problems with Bill had already begun. We had already experienced frustration and some degree of animosity towards his behavior, and Nichelle and Jimmy were on opposite sides of the argument. Jimmy, at that juncture, as it was, he continued this line, had a lot to say about Bill. He was very upset with Bill. Nichelle was still very much a supporter of Bill. And they got into arguments that were embarrassing to hear over a 4-state network. I mean, the show, carried over 4 states. And they were yelling at each other. And it was, it was like 11:00 at night, 12:00. And I was embarrassed. I said absolutely nothing. I hadn't seen it. Dirty Laundry in 4 states could have been the title. I didn't want to hear it. But that's my Nichelle and Jimmy story.
Excellent. All right. Great stuff there. Thank you for that, Walter. Allison Leach Hyde is here. She's got great stuff for us too, I bet. What do you think of this episode?
There are parts of it I like, and there are parts of it I don't like. It definitely shows that it was written in the 60s, the way that she is written, hysterical and demanding things that don't make sense for the situation. The shuttle's not functioning, but she's still demanding they arrive somewhere. It's like, we haven't even tried to fix it yet. Give me a moment. That's not necessary. They even kind of did a little with Ahura too. She's a seasoned officer. She knows how it's going to work. A search. She doesn't need it to be explained to her. I know we as the audience need it explained to us because a lot of us haven't been involved in a search and rescue. But I think they could have written it in a way that didn't make it seem like she'd never done it before. So those are my main issues, and also the line, the idea of male and female are a universal constant, that got me, which, again, it's the 60s. That's what was there, and that's how society was. And so we've moved on to embrace more of the gray about gender. So those are the things that get me, and that Kirk points at her with his phaser to introduce her. That also got me, but that's not about the 60s. That's just because, hey, it was in his hand. He used it to point. But I love the set in this. I thought they used that smaller soundstage wonderfully between all the set dressings. I loved all the colorful plants. I thought that was great, that it was all purple. It was very interesting to look at. And so I thought they used it quite well in different parts of the set. So that I really loved. And I loved the music in it. The problem is it puts me to sleep. So I had to wake up and go back a couple of times because It's very relaxing music too. And that's kind of where I am in this episode, is that it's really pretty to watch and listen to, but there's some of it where I'm like, ouch, no. But it doesn't mean I don't like it. It's just some of it makes me a little cringy, I guess. Yeah.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. Yes.
One more thing. The guy created the companions, I guess the sparkling effects, goes on to win an Oscar for Star Wars. His name is Richard Edlund, and I thought that was super cool.
Cool.
Excellent. Don't watch these episodes at 2:30 in the morning and you won't fall asleep. Allison, that's what she likes to do. But thank you very much, Allison Leach Hyde, out in New Mexico in the desert. Chris Garris is here as well. He watched it at like 9 a.m. He's an early riser. What do you think of this one? Is that early?
This was my first time. I was already up, but this was my first time to watch this episode, actually. Overall, I liked it. I mean, we got introduced to Zefram Cochrane, which I always thought that was kind of cool. Not my first Zefram Cochrane. Mine was James Cromwell, but still, this is the original Zefram Cochrane. Set was good. At first, I was starting to think this might be a bottle show because we hadn't seen the Enterprise in, midway through. Finally, we get to the Enterprise with Scotty. And I was okay, so it's not. They're going to actually have other sets. Yeah, I have to kind of agree. Her acting was great, but does she really have to be that pushy? And I'm like, the shuttlecraft, there's nothing they can do. But she was still demanding, we get here, I've got to do this. And I'm like, okay. But again, that was the time. But I did like how, as it progressed, there was actually a love story to it. And I was not expecting that, actually. And then Kirk was able to talk to them about that and get the companion to understand that, as humans, we have to have a connection. We can't just be by ourselves. And so that was really interesting. And then when the companion took over her body to heal her, and so that she could be the companion with Cochrane, I thought that was really nice. But it was kind of sad that they couldn't leave the planet. I was also like, oh man, hoping they get to leave the planet. But then she said, I can't leave here. So they end up having to stay. But overall, it was a good episode. And the effects, especially the companion effects for the 60s, that was really good to be able to do that. So, yeah, I give it a thumbs up.
Mm-hmm. I just had one thing to say about what the gentleman said. Does she have to be that pushy? Yes, because we have to be able to justify her staying on the planet. And she's an unpleasant, unhappy person at the beginning, and she finds peace and love and tranquility. And so we needed that transition. We needed to see her not being the person she was.
Good cat. Yeah, makes sense.
Well, Walter, on that note, do you have any final thoughts on this particular episode? Any pearls of wisdom you'd like to impart?
I think, it would be insulting to the group for me to try to come up with, I think everybody covered what needs to be covered and said what needs to be said about the episode. I'm glad they made it. I think it has a sense of pure science fiction about it. I don't know. That's my feeling was this is really a science fiction story, and I enjoyed that. And I'm delighted you guys continue to invite me to share thoughts about the shows we've seen. I feel the richer, younger, better human being as a consequence. Anyway, I love you all. Thank you very much.
Wow. Those are excellent final thoughts. Sirach Lofton, you love us all too, probably. What did you think of this episode as final thoughts? Sorry, Jake's final take, I should say.
I thought that one of the themes of this ending was about that man's freedom mankind's freedom is inherent to his nature, which I thought was interesting because the woman in this story doesn't really get a chance to exercise her freedom in this particular instance. They seems like everybody makes a decision for her at the end. And the second thing that jumps out at me is Walter's impersonation of George Takei. I think it was one of the greatest things I've ever seen. When you said, "I'm getting tired,"
I've got to say something, Sirach. I've got to say something, because otherwise you're going to be inundated with mail screaming at you. Don't you know how to pronounce George's last name? It is not Takei. It's Takei.
Takei. Okay.
It's Takei as in Koenig.
Very good.
Okay. Okay. That's great. Well, I loved your impersonation. I loved Mr. Scott having a ship log. There was a moment where he had a chance to do a ship log. I always love ship logs, especially when they come from not the captain. It's interesting for me. It's something I like to jumps out at me. I think this story could have done a little bit of justice with a little bit of a twist in it. And the twist I would have added if I was revising it would have been that this character of Zefram Cochrane would have had amnesia and not know who he was. And part of the mystery of this would have been to discover who he was and for them to remind him that he is the guy that invented the warp drive and whatnot. Because years of isolation and being away has caused him to lose memory of all of his accomplishments on Earth 150 years ago. So I think that would have been a nice twist. The investigative method of trying to discover who he was without having the tools of the ship and their catalog and profile of the computer database. So I think that would have been a nice little twist to see them use logic and reason and deduction to figure out that was Zefram Cochrane. Then the last thing I wanted to mention was the fig tree. There was a mention in the end where Zefram Cochrane says, I'm going to plant a fig tree. I think every man is entitled to a fig tree. My first thought was, where's he going to get the fig tree seeds for? I mean, they just sitting around somewhere. That's what I was thinking. But, just suspend that belief for a second. I do believe that the fig tree reference is a biblical reference. And when you Google fig tree and the Bible, you'll come up with a lot of references to the fig tree, the fig leaf. And one in particular comes from 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 25. And the Bible describes a time when people were prosperous and every man sat under his own fig tree. And I think that's where the reference, every man deserves his own fig tree, comes from. So a little backstory on that. I liked the episode for the same reasons everybody else did, because I thought it just looked visually great. It sounded good with the music. But yeah, they're just imprisoned by the male chauvinist perspective on women and how they should function in society. And that is actually one of the big limiting things for this series, which would make it even better if they had removed those kinds of limitations in their own mental capacity. I think this would have been even better because we would have had more perspective on it. But nonetheless, for the time that it is, it was enjoyable. It wasn't terrible. I thought it flew by on time wise. I was, of course, questioning things, but it just looks so damn beautiful. I love all those colors in the background. I love the hues. I like the backdrops, the open sky drops, and I also agree with Allison about the plants, the brightly colored plants. It just made me feel exotic. It felt like they were somewhere else, and so that was a mission accomplished.
Excellent. Well, that's it for us, everybody. Mission accomplished. We did it. Everybody, make sure you take your fig seeds with you, because you never know. I mean, you might be on a planet that doesn't have fig seeds and you need to plant your own. But thank you to Chris Garris, Allison, Chris Judas Goat McGee, of course, Jason M. Oken, Melissa Longo, For myself, Melissa, Walter, Sirach, and of course, Aaron Eisenberg, thank you all for hanging out with us. We will see you next time. And until then, always remember the 7th rule.